Boyfriend demands to meet my parents, but they've driven away every boyfriend I've had, and I'm terrified he'll leave too. I was very shy during high school and didn't leave my house unless I had to, so as a result I didn't get a boyfriend until my freshman year of college. After 7 months of dating my first ever boyfriend, I brought him to my parents' house for dinner, you know. Just so they could meet him, I had to step away for roughly 10 minutes to help my older sister with her baby, and when I came back, my boyfriend, then 20 male, and my dad, old, were having a full-blown fist fight. We managed to stop them and my BF stormed off without saying anything, while my dad insisted my BF was incredibly rude and disrespectful to him and my mother and that a guy like that was no good for me. Because he'd just end up doing the same thing to me. I was shocked that my BF could do such a thing because he had always been extremely sweet and I've never met or heard of anyone not liking him, but when I called him and told him what my dad had said about what happened, all he did was laugh and say I can believe whatever I want, before blocking me on everything. I was deeply disturbed by this, but my mom and sister insisted that he had just shown his true colors and said my dad saved me from an abuser. I reluctantly accepted this, but something about it felt really off. I met my second boyfriend several months later, during my sophomore year. Part of me still felt my parents were part of the problem with my last BF. So I managed to get him to wait an entire year before introducing him to my parents. From the moment she laid eyes on him, every word my mom spoke to him was dripping with fake friendliness and subtle jabs implying she did not approve of him, which made him visibly uncomfortable. While we were eating dinner, she began asking me why or what made me decide to date my BF, and asked about other guys and why they didn't work out. Some of the guys she asked about were completely made up. At this point it was clear what they were trying to do, and I silently vowed to talk to my BF and tell him how my parents were trying to sabotage me. Unfortunately, it didn't get that far, as my dad chipped in and demanded to know how a boy who couldn't support himself financially was ever going to support his daughter. Mind you, we were both juniors in college at this point, and both of us were working part-time jobs. So this question was really insane. He responded by saying he'd already decided he wanted nothing to do with this family and was planning to break up with me when he got home, but he's just going to leave now. Within minutes, he was gone, and I was blocked. Again, my parents insisted they did nothing wrong and just wanted to test his confidence as any parents would, but I pointed out that this was the second boyfriend they'd chased away, and they didn't do anything to scare off my older sister's husband. I went low contact with them after that, but fast forwarding a little bit, I eventually allowed them to gaslight me into introducing them to my third boyfriend, whom I had met towards the end of my senior year, and basically the same thing happened. I had made it through college unable to find a long-term BF, purely because of my parents. I did meet my current BF, 28 meters, 2 years ago, and I have managed to avoid introducing him to my family thus far. If he ever brought it up I would always have a ready-made excuse prepared to explain why it wasn't possible, which has been pretty easy because he usually only asks about them when planning for major holidays. I have fallen madly in love with him and hope to start a family with him one day, but he recently told me that he can't even allow me to move in with him until he's had a chance to meet my family. I do not know what to do, as I know my parents will make it their mission to break us up if they meet him, but based on his insistence on meeting them, I realize I can't put this off any longer. Usually, relationships end because of something one person in the relationship says or does, and it's incredibly unfair that I always end up single because of things I cannot control. I want to tell my BF about my parents and insist that meeting them is a bad idea, but I've listened in on some of his conversations with his friends, and the general consensus among them seems to be that a girl with a super dysfunctional family is a massive red flag, and an indicator of what their married life would be like. So I come here asking, how do I approach the problem that is my parents without risking losing the longest relationship I've ever had? If my parents end up being the cause of yet another breakup, I just don't know what I'll do. I just don't know. I am not fully no contact with my parents primarily because they helped me a lot financially during college, and when I first graduated and was looking for a job, when I went low contact with them they constantly yelled at me for being ungrateful and said family does not turn on each other over minor disagreement involving boys. It sounds ridiculous when I type it here, but after months of this treatment, when I found myself faced with the decision to either tell them I forgive them so they'll pay for my dorm room, or refuse to forgive them and have to move back home, I ended up caving. Why didn't I stand up for my past BFs when I saw them being verbally abused? I don't know. I've never been allowed to talk back to my parents, so the thought of calling them out while we have company over is not something I realized I could do, I guess. My arguments with them after they ran off BF 2 and 3 were the only times I've ever come into full conflict with them in my entire life. I will be going to my BF's house today after work, and will tell him everything. I am terrified he will still want to meet them. Just thinking about it has me shaking at my desk, but you all are right. He has a right to know and make his own decision. Update 1. I meant to make this update a lot sooner, but since my last post a lot has happened. I truly appreciate all the comments I received calling me out for hiding my parents being insane from my BF and encouraging me to be honest with him. My BF is pretty involved now, so I guess I should give him a fake name. I will call him Ethan. I sat Ethan down and told him about my parents and how they ran off my previous BFs, before showing him my original post as many recommended. Fortunately, he did not seem to care that I hadn't told him, but he did agree with many commenters that my parents were more than just insane, they were outright abusive, although he understood how I felt. He still said he would like to meet them, both to see it for himself, but also because he felt there was an underlying reason for their behavior. My parents have dinner for the family every Sunday, which I have been attending on the weeks that I'm not hanging out with Ethan that day, so we agreed that he would come to the next one. When Sunday came and we arrived at my parents' house, my anxiety was through the roof. Ethan had agreed to leave with me the moment things started to get out of hand, but with my parents that could have easily been as soon we walked through the front door. My parents were surprisingly very nice, though. My dad actually seemed excited to see Ethan, and my mom fawned over her daughter bringing home such a handsome, confident-looking man. I couldn't understand what was happening. Ethan even shot me a look a couple times, as if to silently ask if he was missing something, because my parents were actually I want to provide a play-by-play of the entire night, but the post would just be too long. The point is, my parents had done a complete 180 from their previous behavior, and it made me look and feel crazy for trying to warn Ethan about them ahead of time. During dinner, my mom said she was so happy to see her daughter had finally found someone who wasn't judgmental and was willing to give me a chance because of the person I am today, because the past doesn't matter. My heart dropped. What was she talking about? Ethan said he does not know about anything in my past that may be cause of concern. And my parents exchanged a concerned look, as if it was rehearsed. My dad asked him why he thinks my previous relationships failed, and he said that he was under the impression they got scared away after meeting my parents. My mother looked at me with disappointment on her face and said up. Is that really what you told him? I was at a loss for words, but Ethan was not. He said that it's pretty clear they are trying to plant seeds of doubt in him about our relationship, but he is not interested, as he knows me well enough to know my character and that even if there was something serious in my past, parents who loved and supported me or even just wanted grandchildren would keep it a secret to avoid ruining my relationship. My dad said he already has 2 grandchildren, and motioned towards my sister, who did not have her kids with her that evening. Ethan said my dad must have been very supportive of my sister for her to be able to start a family while he tries to run off any guy I bring home, and my dad's response was very casual, but extremely shocking. He said of course, she's actually mine. Everyone was quiet for a few moments, until Ethan spoke up and said that now all of the abuse they've only put me through is starting to make sense. My mom said he's spouting nonsense, and that I have not been abused in any way. She then looked at me and admitted her marriage had a rocky start, but both her and my father have moved past that. I was too busy replaying my entire life in my head to say anything. The previous boyfriends, the lack of support for my social outings growing up, the volleyball games I had to have a friend drive me to because my parents were always too busy, the rage I was always at risk of facing if I ever spoke my mind. All while my sister got the opposite. I started to cry, the hardest I ever have. Ethan immediately announced that we are leaving. My dad demanded we stay where we are so we can clear things up, but Ethan ignored him as he pulled me out of my chair and led me away. My mom screamed at me not to leave, and that this guy was trying to isolate me from my family. I yelled back that if anyone had been trying to isolate me, it was her, for my whole life. As we drove back to Ethan's place, my mom sent me several text messages cussing me out, saying one mistake doesn't change the fact that my dad loved, supported, and raised me, and that he would always be my real father. Ethan said he's not my dad, he's an abusive, controlling asshole who was taking his insecurities out on me. I ended up blocking both of my parents' numbers because they were saying some truly awful things to me, both about myself and Ethan. Ethan said he was expecting them to be crazy, but this was far worse than he could have anticipated. He said I need to go into therapy immediately, and that he will pay for anything my insurance doesn't cover. My parents showed up at my apartment twice yesterday to demand I come out and speak to them, but I've been staying at Ethan's all weekend and will likely be here all week. I'm not sure if this is the update y'all wanted. I had countless people enraged at me for being spineless and not standing up to my parents, and while I had planned on doing so, that's not what happened. I don't know what is going to happen with my parents or where I go from here, but now that the holiday is over I can spend some time looking for a good therapist. Update 2. After staying at Ethan's for that week, I returned to my apartment but kept my parents blocked. My sister reached out multiple times, alternating between begging me to talk to our parents and accusing me of tearing the family apart over ancient history. I finally agreed to meet her for coffee, hoping for some clarity. That meeting was revealing. She admitted she'd always known I wasn't Dad's biological child, and that our parents had sworn her to secrecy when she was 12. According to her, Mom had an affair early in their marriage, got pregnant with me, and Dad decided to forgive her and raise me as his own. The catch? He never actually forgave either of us. You have to understand, she said, Dad felt humiliated. He's been trying his best, but seeing you with boyfriends just triggers something and I lost it. So that justifies sabotaging every relationship I've ever had. Making me feel crazy. Isolating me my entire life. She just shrugged and said, Family is complicated. I walked out. Family might be complicated, but abuse is pretty straightforward. I started therapy the following week. My therapist, Dr. Kumar, has been incredible. She helped me understand that what my parents did wasn't just being overprotective, it was systematic emotional abuse designed to keep me dependent on them. She's also helping me work through my anxiety and the trust issues that came from years of gaslighting. Ethan has been my rock through all of this. After our third therapy session, he helped me move the last of my things from my apartment to his place. We've been officially living together for 2 months now, and honestly, it's been amazing. His friends, who I was so worried about judging me, have become some of my biggest supporters. His best friend Marco even offered to teach me kickboxing as a way to channel my anger, which has been surprisingly therapeutic. Last month, my parents escalated things. They showed up at my workplace unannounced. Security had to escort them out after my mom started screaming that Ethan was brainwashing me. My dad just stood there with that same cold look he always had when I disappointed him. My boss was incredibly understanding and helped me file a temporary restraining order against them. I never thought I'd be the person who needed legal protection from their own parents, but here we are. I've started reconnecting with some old friends from college, people I drifted away from because my parents always found reasons to dislike them. It turns out many of them noticed how controlling my parents were but didn't know how to bring it up. One friend, Jess, revealed that my second boyfriend had actually reached out to her after our breakup, concerned about my home situation. He didn't block me because he was a jerk, he blocked me because he thought I was choosing my abusive family over him. I can't really blame him, my biological father is still a mystery. Mom refuses to tell me who he is, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know right now. Dr. Kumar says it's okay to put that question aside until I feel ready to deal with it. Yesterday, Ethan and I were having dinner when he asked if I'd ever consider changing my last name, not necessarily to mine, he clarified quickly. Just, something that's yours. A fresh start. I hadn't thought about it before, but the idea feels right. I'm not the person my parents tried to mold me into. I'm starting to discover who I actually am without their influence, and maybe a new name could be part of that journey, so that's where I am now, building a new life, setting boundaries, and healing. There are still bad days when I question everything or feel guilty for cutting them off. But the good days are starting to outnumber the bad ones. As for Ethan, he proposed last weekend. Nothing fancy, we were just making pancakes on Sunday morning, and he looked at me and said, "I want to do this forever. Will you marry me?" I said yes, of course. We're planning a small ceremony next spring with just friends and chosen family. I don't know what the future holds with my parents, part of me hopes they'll get therapy and recognize the damage they've done, but I'm not waiting around for that anymore. I've spent enough of my life letting their issues control me. Update 3. It's been a little over a year since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have turned out. So much has changed that I barely recognize my life from before, mostly in good ways. Ethan and I got married 6 months ago in a small ceremony with about 30 people. Just close friends and his family. His parents have been incredible to me, especially his mom who somehow always knows when I need space and when I need a hug. The wedding was nothing like the elaborate affairs my mother used to describe as what every girl dreams of, but it was perfect for us. We wrote our own vows, and I managed to get through mine without crying, though it was a close call. Ethan's best friend Marco officiated, and my college friend Jess was my maid of honor. My parents and sister weren't invited. That decision wasn't easy, but after multiple sessions with Dr. Kumar, I realized I didn't want to spend my wedding day anxious about what drama they might cause. The restraining order had expired by then, but I kept my boundaries firm. My mom still sends occasional texts from new numbers when I block the old ones, alternating between guilt trips, "I'm your mother, how could you do this to me?" and bizarre olive branches, "I saw a dress that would look lovely on you." My dad hasn't reached out at all. My sister showed up at my apartment, my old one. She didn't know I'd moved, 3 weeks before the wedding with a letter she claimed was from both my parents, begging me to end this ridiculous feud and inviting them to the wedding. When I refused, she accused me of being selfish and playing the victim. She said some truly horrible things that day, including that I was punishing them for something that happened before I was even born. I told her that I was protecting myself from people who had systematically sabotaged my happiness for 25 years, and that if she couldn't see the difference, maybe we needed space too. We haven't spoken since. Therapy has been life-changing. Dr. Kumar helped me recognize how deeply my parents' treatment affected my self-worth and decision-making. I used to think I was just naturally shy and anxious, but now I understand how much of that was trained into me. I've been working on setting boundaries, expressing my needs clearly, and not apologizing for existing skills that sound basic but were completely foreign to me a year ago. In a weird twist of fate, my second ex-boyfriend, the college one, reached out to me after seeing a mutual friend post about my engagement. He apologized for how things ended and admitted he'd been immature in his reaction. We had coffee once, which was awkward but healing in its own way. He's married now with a baby on the way. it was strangely validating to hear him say, "Your parents were absolutely terrifying, and I just didn't know how to handle it at 21. Career-wise, I've flourished since getting away from my parents' influence. I switched departments at work, moving from accounting to marketing where I'm much happier. My boss, who witnessed the scene my parents caused, has become something of a mentor. And I've received 2 promotions in the past year. Turns out I'm actually good at creative problem solving when I'm not second-guessing every decision. Ethan and I bought a small house about an hour from the city. It's nothing fancy, but it has a yard where we've started a garden and enough space for his home office and my craft room. We've talked about kids and decided to wait another year or 2, but we did adopt a rescue dog, a goofy 3-legged pit mix named Buckley who thinks he's a lapdog despite weighing 60 pounds. The question of my biological father resurfaced a few months ago when I decided to do one of those DNA testing kits, partly out of curiosity and partly for health information. I discovered I have a half-brother, from my biological father's side, who lives across the country. We've exchanged a few cautious emails. He told me our father passed away 5 years ago from heart disease, information that was both disappointing and oddly freeing. I'm still processing how I feel about never having the chance to meet him. There are still hard days. Mother's Day was particularly rough this year, and I sometimes catch myself slipping into old thought patterns, assuming I've done something wrong when Ethan is quiet, or feeling like I need to make myself smaller in social situations, but the difference is now I recognize those moments for what they are, echoes of my upbringing. Not reality. Last week, I found an old photo album while unpacking a box I'd forgotten about. There was a picture of my parents holding me as a baby, both of them smiling. For a moment, I felt that familiar twist of guilt and confusion. How could people who look so happy with their child turn out to be so destructive? Dr. Kumar says it's not unusual for abusive parents to have moments of genuine love and affection, which makes the whole situation more confusing for the child. She's right, but understanding that intellectually doesn't always make it easier emotionally. Ethan found me crying over the album and just sat with me, not trying to fix anything or rush me through the feelings. That's been one of the biggest gifts of this relationship, the space to feel everything without judgment. Update 4. It's been 2 years since my last post, and while I'd love to say everything has been smooth sailing, that wouldn't be entirely true. Things with Ethan are wonderful. We celebrated our 3rd anniversary last month, and he still makes me laugh every single day. We've settled into our house, finished renovating the kitchen, never again, and Buckley now has a sister, a one-eyed cat named Wink who showed up on our porch during a thunderstorm and never left. The big news is that I'm 6 months pregnant with our first child, a girl. We're naming her Maya, which means brave in some cultures. Finding out I was pregnant was a mix of joy and absolute terror. Part of me was afraid I'd somehow turn into my mother once I had a child. Dr. Kumar has been helping me work through those fears, reminding me that awareness is the first step to breaking cycles. Ethan has been reading every parenting book he can find, determined that we'll create a home filled with the love and support neither of us fully had growing up. Now for the complicated part. 4 months ago, my sister showed up at our door unannounced. I nearly closed it in her face, but something about her expression stopped me. She looked broken. Turns out, she'd finally seen behind the curtain of our parents' manipulation. According to her, our mother had been getting increasingly unstable after I cut contact. She became obsessed with the idea that my dad was cheating on her. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She started monitoring his phone, following him to work, and accusing random women of having affairs with him. My sister had always defended her, making excuses for the behavior just like she'd done with how they treated me. The breaking point came when my mom had a complete meltdown at my niece's school concert, accusing my sister's husband's coworker, who was there for her own child, of sleeping with my dad. My sister said it was like watching someone transform into a stranger right before her eyes. My dad's response was to check my mom into a psychiatric facility against her will and tell the family. She was on vacation. My sister found out the truth when she went to their house and found my dad packing up my mom's things. When she confronted him, he coldly told her that her mother was getting the help she needs and that they wouldn't be discussing it further. When she pushed back, he threatened to cut her off financially. Apparently he'd been helping with their mortgage, something I never knew. She left in tears and spent the next week piecing together things that had never made sense, including how our parents had treated me. She admitted that she'd always known something was wrong but had convinced herself it was normal because acknowledging the truth meant accepting she'd been complicit. I didn't forgive her right away. 3 years of silence followed by a sudden realization when it finally affected her didn't seem like enough. But I did listen, and when she asked if she could come to my next therapy session, I reluctantly agreed. That session was brutally honest. Dr. Kumar didn't let either of us hide behind platitudes. My sister broke down completely when she had to acknowledge that she'd watched our parents isolate and gaslight me for years, and that she'd benefited from being the real daughter. I admitted that part of me had always resented her, not just for being favored but for never standing up for me. We've been slowly rebuilding since then. She comes over for dinner once a month. And we text occasionally. Ethan was skeptical at first but has come to believe her change of heart is genuine. She started therapy herself and has been setting boundaries with our dad, who apparently doesn't like the new dynamic one bit. My mother is still in treatment, diagnosed with borderline personality disorder among other things. My sister visits her and says she's improving with medication, but I'm not ready for that contact. Maybe someday, but not while I'm carrying my daughter. I need to protect my peace right now. In an unexpected twist, my half-brother from my biological father's side flew out to meet me 6 months ago. James is 5 years older than me, successful, kind, and has my exact laugh, something that startled both of us the first time it happened. He shared stories and photos of our complicated man who had apparently tried to find me when I was in my teens but was turned away by my mother. James and his wife have become regular visitors, and he's thrilled about becoming an uncle. The most surprising development came 3 weeks ago when my first boyfriend, the one who got into a fist fight with my dad, reached out through LinkedIn of all places. He's a corporate lawyer now, married with twins. He apologized for how things ended and shared what actually happened that night. My dad had told him I was damaged goods because I wasn't his biological child, and that any man who stayed with me was settling for another man's leftovers. When my boyfriend offended me, my dad threw the first punch. All these years, I'd been carrying the weight of thinking 3 different men had found me unworthy after meeting my parents, when in reality, they'd each been trying to escape an impossible situation. I wish they'd told me the truth back then, but they were young and unprepared for that level of family dysfunction. I can't blame them anymore. The nursery is painted now, a soft green with a mural of trees that Ethan spent weeks perfecting. I sit in there sometimes, rubbing my belly and promises to Maya, I promise to see her as her own person, not an extension of myself.